It is 10 a.m. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. College baseball, Vanderbilt routed Tennessee and Hoover on Wednesday, 13-4 in the SEC tournament. Tennessee threw 8 pitchers in the loss, and the Vols are now 1 loss from elimination. They will take on Texas A&M this afternoon in Hoover at 1 p.m. Vanderbilt moves on. They play Mississippi State tonight at 8. Currently in progress, an elimination game between 2-seed Arkansas and 3-seed Kentucky. The Wildcats lead it 2-0, bottom of the second inning. NBA playoffs, the Mavericks took game 1 of the Western Conference Finals at the Timberwolves, 108-106. Luka Doncic with 33 points. In the NHL, the Florida Panthers won game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals at the Rangers, 2-0. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Good morning. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Off to a hot start on this Thursday. We'd love to have your participation at any point. 615-737-1045. That's the number. Feel free. You can also jump in via the F&M Bank chat, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. So, don't know how many of us had Vandy just crushing Tennessee last night, 13-4. For the Vols, it was their SEC tournament opener. For everybody else, it was the second round. And, after snapping the 9-game losing streak to Tony Vitello and Tennessee, Tim Corbin and Vandy responded a big spot yesterday afternoon. They lost in the third game of that 2-game series here a couple of, what was that, Jackson, about a week and a half ago? When did we have Tony on?
That was 2 weeks
We had
ago.
Tony on the radio show?
Yes.
That was 2 days ago.
Okay.
Yeah, that was 2 days ago. Yes. My goodness.
Feels like
actually, no,
longer.
that was yesterday. That was actually yesterday.
No,
that's not
it
true.
was Tuesday.
That's not true.
It was Tuesday.
It was Tuesday.
It was the same day as Titans media availability. Back off.
It was Tuesday. No, Tennessee played Vanderbilt on West End the weekend I left, which was almost exactly 2 weeks ago. And Vandy was able to end that 9-game losing skid on Sunday to take 1 game out of that series. They shut out Tennessee in that game. This was very different. This was a very different vibe. Tennessee rolling out a midweek pitching staff, and it blew up in their face.
Vandy's on the bubble.
Not anymore.
That's what I'm getting to. After finishing 13-17, though, in the conference, you're looking at them and saying, all right, we'll see. You trust Tim Corbin, you trust institutional knowledge and all the ways that program has found ways to overcome adversity. And Tennessee has presented some adversity for Vanderbilt in the last couple of years. Obviously, it's been a lot of fun to watch play out as an in-state rivalry. But after they solidified their position, winning over Florida on Tuesday, they're in. The Vols win solidifies them being in.
Yeah, and Tennessee, it feels hard to imagine the Vols getting a 1 seed at this point in the postseason, in the NCAA postseason, and they're facing elimination, as are the other top 4 seeds in the SEC tournament. All top 4 seeds in Hoover go down in their first game of the SEC tournament, and you've got Arkansas and Kentucky playing an elimination game right now.
615-737-1045 is the number if you want to join the discussion. So, Vanderbilt, are we still awaiting an opponent on Vanderbilt?
No, they've got Mississippi State tonight at 8.
Mississippi State tonight. So that will be for a spot in the tournament semifinal on Saturday. And the loser of that game will face the winner of the elimination game that's going on right now on Friday. So there's a lot of moving parts. For Tennessee, what was the thing that disappointed you the most about the output or lack thereof? Because Vandy scoring at will is not something that we've been used to seeing this year, especially up against Tennessee, which is a historically good lineup with a lot of high-level bats. I did not anticipate it to be that lopsided one, but for the Vols not to be able to keep pace. Pitching was nasty for Vandy last night.
Yeah, for Tennessee not to be able to keep it close for longer offensively was tough. But this was always going to be a possibility with the strategy the Vols went in this game. They get A.J. Russell, one inning coming in the sixth, and he's one of two pitchers. Tennessee rolled out 8 guys yesterday. Only 2 did not allow a run. A.J. Russell is one. So if there's any positive for Tennessee, it's that A.J. Russell got in, had some good work, and Tennessee is now 2-11 in opening games of the SEC tournament when it's played in Hoover. So Hoover has not been kind to Tennessee. One of those 2 wins came a couple of years ago, and they won it all in 2022, won the SEC tournament, that is. But this always felt like a possibility that this could blow up in your face with this strategy. It's a Vanderbilt team that needs to solidify its spot in the postseason, and credit to Vanderbilt. They came out swinging, and they absolutely jumped all over Tennessee. A brutal start for the Vols, and they just couldn't recover.
So it shouldn't affect the expectation at all. Like, Tennessee still has to hold serve now, given a little bit of adversity, and find a way to not have it rattle them. I don't know. Baseball's weird that way, so you can get those results. And this is not a single game elimination tournament. I feel pretty good about where Tennessee is at still. How much credit should be given to Tim Corbin? As much as, so I guess, how do we distribute the blame versus the credit here? Because Tennessee's decision with the pitching staff clearly cost them, and that was something that Vanderbilt was able to take advantage of. Is that an error by Vitello and his staff, or is that Tim Corbin playing the situation correctly and taking advantage of an advantageous lineup?
Yeah, I mean, Tony V had a few options here. He could have approached this like it was a Friday game when you want to set the tone of a 3-game series, but he didn't. He approached it like it was a midweek against Lipscomb, right? And it's up to you how you want to take that. If you wish they had gone in with maybe, I don't want to say a little more seriousness, because Tennessee played to win this game. Like, I'm not going to dismiss this and say, well, the Vols, clearly they weren't really in it. They're rolling out 8 pitchers. Like, Tennessee went in with this strategy with hopes to win, to be able to play their day 1, 2, and 3 guys moving forward deeper into the SEC tournament. And now they find themselves in an elimination bracket, in a loser bracket, with all the best teams in the SEC. It's weird how this has played out, but that's what this conference is. We've seen before teams in this conference finish the season with losing records and then go win it all. Like, Ole Miss literally just did it, 2 years ago? So Vanderbilt absolutely is one of those teams to keep an eye on. They finish with a losing record in SEC play. They start off hot in the SEC tournament. They're the defending SEC tournament champs. You could very easily see Vandy getting hot deeper into the postseason. Tennessee needs to be careful that it did not get hot at the wrong time or too early. So Chris Stamos is going to start. I just saw Mike Wilson, who's going to be on with us in about an hour, tweet Chris Stamos starts for Tennessee tonight. A&M will start all SEC pitcher Ryan Prager in a game that starts at 1 o'clock.
Well, it was pretty interesting because I was reading Gentry Estes in the Tennessean this morning, and he pointed out, when the Vols needed a solid, needed Kentucky to lose so that they could have a share of the SEC regular season title, who beat Kentucky on the road? Vandy. So it's a strong finish to the season, to the end of the regular season for Vanderbilt, and obviously Kentucky, a very high-level team as well. And, we'll see how this continues to play out between Kentucky and Arkansas. Kentucky up 2-0 at the top of the third right now. Are we going to do like updates? You want to do a little play-by-play? That'd be fun.
Not baseball, not necessarily my play-by-play forte.
Well, I don't want you to be good at it. I want it to be funny. But still, Vanderbilt, tough to imagine a way that you would feel more impressed with how they're putting it together at the end to try and make a push for Omaha, or rather try and make a push for the postseason. They're not, I don't know. They're not doing it in any one conventional way, but I think the thing that you like if you're a Vanderbilt fan today is that you continue to see Tim Corbin adapt to this team and kind of continue to make improvements, and that improvement paying dividends throughout the course of the season. And now at the most important time of year, that Vanderbilt and the program and the coaching staff and the players on the roster know how to handle themselves. So for Tennessee, we'll see what happens. Vandy fans have to be pretty happy today. It's just, every Vanderbilt fan likes sticking a thumb in a Tennessee fan's eye. Any excuse that they can get for whatever reason, Vandy fans have to be feeling a little smug today, a little chesty. We don't hear from them very often, so we'd love to hear from Vanderbilt fans today on the success of your baseball program, but we'll see how much they can continue to keep that momentum going.
They should feel that way. They should. They smoked Tennessee yesterday, right? Like, this is a team that knows how to win in the postseason. A big thing for Vanderbilt, too, was they didn't really have enough high quality, to use a basketball term, quad one type of wins throughout the course of the regular season. Well, they grabbed a couple on the back end, beating Kentucky, doing Tennessee that solid, of giving the Vols a share of the regular season title, and now smoking Tennessee to start off SEC tournament play. So, yeah, Vanderbilt knows how to win at this time of year, and it'll be interesting to see what they do against Mississippi State, two storied programs going head-to-head tonight, in Tennessee just trying to stay alive in Hoover this afternoon.
Some comments from the F&M Bank chat. Brandon Rushing on YouTube says 2 things can be true. Vandy played well, and Tennessee used the game to see which relief pitchers they can trust down the stretch. And somebody else on YouTube points out, Russell says, funny the mental gymnastics Vols fans do. Just embrace the fragile egos. Eat it.
Both those things can be true. Just because Tennessee went in with a midweek kind of strategy doesn't mean that they were just rolling over and it doesn't really matter what happens today. The goal here is to, Tennessee wanted to win this game. Tony Vitello was pissed after the game.
Sure.
Tony Vitello wasn't up there at the podium, kicked back with his feet up like some Tennessee fans seem to be. I get you don't have to be overly concerned about losing the first game of the SEC tournament when you didn't play really any of your aces besides A.J. Russell, and that was just a matter of getting him back into the fold. But, Tennessee wanted to win this baseball game, and they got smoked. They didn't have enough offense to even keep up. Yes, the pitching was poor, but they hang 4 runs on the night. So, yeah, it was a very disappointing day for Tennessee baseball, and they're going to need to bounce back.
More praise for the Tennessee Vols. Can't wait for Tony V and the Vols to choke like they do every year from Hayden Stone, whose YouTube picture appears to be a Vanderbilt baseball player. So it seems that the Vandy fans have at least found the YouTube chat, if not the phone lines. We'll see if that continues to bear itself out through the course of the show.
How long does it take for a program to go from, because Tennessee baseball was in the depths, right, when Tony V took over. And he gets them to a point where they've been to Omaha multiple times, where they've won the SEC tournament, they've won the SEC regular season, consistently one of the best teams in the country. What do you think the timeline is to getting a program back to national relevance and that turning into, they choke in the postseason, right? How long does it take for people to be impressed by the fact that you are one of the best teams in the country for that to turn into, they can't win the big one?
I don't know. Is the choking thing a popular narrative right now? Because I hear it every once in a while, but not really. And even from Vols fans every once in a while, you'll hear some critiques of, and I'm not watching Tennessee baseball on a day-by-day basis during the regular season. I'm not going to pretend that that's the case, so I'm not aware enough of whether the strategy criticisms are fair. But when I listen to Charlie and Zach Reagan, they do the Vols podcast, the Big Orange podcast for A to Z, and they're super Vols, super orange colored glasses the whole way through. And Charlie is very open about his criticisms of Tony V's lineup decisions from time to time, or midweek strategy on occasion. So I don't know how much of that is fair. I don't really feel like I hear a lot of it around Vitello, other than when something like this happens. And, this is not inconsequential. This is an in-state rival, a conference rival, coming out and kicking your ass after you had the day off. And you're enjoying that. And you've just run through the regular season with great success as the number 1 team in the country, while still, for the majority of it, being second in the SEC to Kentucky. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic for this year's Tennessee team.
Well, that's the thing Vanderbilt has over Tennessee, and rightfully so. Tennessee does not have that national title. Doesn't mean it won't happen, but it hasn't yet. So Vandy has every right to jump all over Tennessee in situations like this.
Well, we will see what else Mike Wilson has to tell us from Hoover. He'll join us in about an hour, like Lucas said. In the meantime, we'll talk some football. There's a lot of interesting quarterback situations, but how many actual quarterback battles are there in the NFL right now? We'll get into that coming up next. It's the absolute worst time of the year to be dealing with joint pain. You can't do the outdoor stuff that you love to do. Hiking, jogging, biking, whatever it is, you want to make sure that you can move pain-free this summer. Don't go through another season missing out on life. Call QC Kinetics now and find out how they can use biologics from your own body to give new life to your achy joints. QC's regenerative medicine protocols can restore and repair that damaged tissue with no surgery, no steroids, no drugs, and no downtime. It's the future of medicine, and tens of thousands of QC Kinetics patients around the country are living their best life this year because they made the call. QC medical professionals are under the direction of Dr. Mitchell Shinecup, a former orthopedic surgeon who became a true pioneer in regenerative medicine. Call QC Kinetics now for a free consultation. 615-249-4024. That's 615-249-4024. Most interesting quarterback battles in the NFL. How many actual quarterback competitions are there? Last year, Titans had a backup quarterback competition that was fairly intriguing. They drafted a high-level prospect in the second round that, fair to say, most people didn't expect Will Levis to be a second-round pick, right? I feel like the majority of people in the NFL thought the dude was going to go in the first round. Maybe not top 10, maybe not top 3 or whatever, but feel like it was a pretty big surprise to everybody, including him, that he slid to the second pick of the second round and that the Titans were actively even trying to trade up in the first round to get him in that draft. But it was about a backup quarterback battle. It wasn't really ever like, we didn't feel like Tannehill's job was in question at any point in preseason, in OTAs. Maybe it was floated in a couple of places nationally because he's a young, very talented player. Tannehill has not been statistically successful, and the Titans have struggled in the last couple of years, so maybe it made sense from an outside perspective, but there was never any indication from the coaching staff that it was anybody but Ryan Tannehill week 1.
The battle was for the backup spot.
Can we say that this year? Because I don't think so. And it's only one OTA practice that I've seen, but I don't know. I have such a low ceiling for Malik Willis right now, but for me to still come away from Tuesday's open practice pretty underwhelmed. I don't think there's a backup quarterback competition this year.
I never considered there to be one. Did you?
Nah, I don't know. Maybe.
You can say these things. Yeah, there's competition at every position, but a coaching staff brought in an accomplished backup quarterback in the NFL, somebody that has played in this league that this staff brought in. Yeah, to me, it was never a battle. Mason Rudolph is also being paid backup quarterback money. He came here to be the backup quarterback, not to compete with Malik Willis to see who will be the backup quarterback.
So what is the most interesting NFL quarterback battle right now? Because I feel like it's a similar situation in Pittsburgh. Russell Wilson is the starter until he's not. Justin Fields, who the team traded with the Chicago Bears for, they gave up a 6th-round pick to remake their quarterback room. They shipped Kenny Pickett off to Philadelphia to back up Jalen Hurts. And now, I think from an outside perspective, most people are looking at Pittsburgh the same way that they were looking at Tennessee, a little bit of a different situation, but there's some parallels. Veteran quarterback, not performing as well as he used to. Young player, has a high ceiling, even though there's more of a sample size on him, and he's been in the league now for 4 years?
Fields?
4 for Fields. This will be 4.
Well, this will be 4, and the interesting thing about Justin Fields is the Steelers did not pick up his 5th-year option, which they obviously have the rights to at this point. So Justin Fields is in the final year of his deal, and he's going into the season as, like you said, we assume the backup quarterback to Russell Wilson. So if the Steelers and Arthur Smith can kind of find a way to work with Russell Wilson and he stays healthy and they do what Mike Tomlin teams do, right? They go 9-8 or whatever. They sneak into the postseason and we don't really see a lot of Justin Fields. His contract's up at the end of the season. Then what? Do you extend Justin Fields on backup quarterback money, or would the preferred situation for Pittsburgh, who is paying virtually nothing for Russell Wilson to play football for them? Broncos are paying for it.
$1.35 million this year.
So they're paying Justin Fields more. Would the better scenario for Pittsburgh actually be for, by the end of the season, Justin Fields to be the one playing quarterback and playing well? Like, if you're a Steelers fan, would you rather Russell Wilson be playing good football for the Steelers or Justin Fields be the one playing good football for the Steelers?
Yeah, but Justin Fields has to get on the field.
Right.
Like, to be able to showcase that. And because it's interesting, just based on, like, I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know specifics about the offense that Arthur Smith runs and how it differentiates itself from Matt LaFleur. There are certain tendencies that I think you could tell with Art, but again, it depends on personnel, and he was supposed to be very well set up for success in Atlanta, and, you know, some quarterback hindrances, and Desmond Ridder, obviously not there anymore. The quarterback situation in Atlanta is pretty interesting.
Ridder is a Cardinal.
As a matter of fact. So Desmond Ridder traded away as well this offseason. But in Pittsburgh, this is from Albert Breer. Steelers coach Mike Tomlin was upfront with Justin Fields. Told him that Russell Wilson is the starter and Fields will work from there. So at least at the start, there doesn't appear to be a quarterback competition. Now, if something happens to Russ like it did with Tannehill, and Justin Fields finds himself in the lineup, that seems like the more obvious situation than all of a sudden we get to when are most teams opening? I think September the 8th is the first full-blown NFL Sunday. Most teams are going to get to September the 8th, and I don't think we expect to see Justin Fields under center for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
And Justin Fields is telling media he's got his eye on that starting role. Russell Wilson knows that.
Sure.
The whole team knows that.
Yeah.
He's not going in with the mindset of I'm here to support Russ. He's going in with the mindset of, his quote was, I definitely don't have the mindset of me just sitting all year. So that's not a battle per se, because I agree with you. I think we're under the assumption Russ starts the season off, but it's something to monitor. I think the better way to phrase this is not what's the most interesting QB battle, because we don't really get QB battles in the NFL anymore, right? It's very far and few between. And when we do get them, it's typically not on a contending team.
But Urban Meyer gave Gardner Minshew half the snaps with Trevor Lawrence. What do you mean?
Well, and ironically, Gardner Minshew is probably the only one in an actual quarterback battle in Vegas with Aiden O'Connell. Put it this way. Last year, the conversation around the most interesting QB battle in the NFL was in Tampa, and it was Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask. That didn't exactly...
No, it's fair, because when there was even the guise of a quarterback battle with Tannehill and Malik, look at the way that people pounced on it.
Yeah.
Look at what was it, Mentorgate?
Yeah.
And the way that all swirled out of control.
So it's more about the dynamic, the situation that you'll keep an eye on to see how it plays out throughout the course of the season. And for me, Pittsburgh is the most interesting one in that regard.
What about Denver, though, as a situation? If we're describing it as a situation more than a battle, is there any real sense that Sean Payton, who traded for Zach Wilson this offseason, is there any sense that it's not Bo Nix's job in Denver when you use the 12th overall pick on that guy? Now, you could point to Atlanta, who we'll get to, and say, well, look at the Falcons. Kirk Cousins is getting paid, I don't even want to call it starting quarterback money, because if Goff is getting $53 million a year, then it's just kind of still, we like you. We don't love you. We like you, Kirk Cousins.
It's a $180 million contract.
It's a lot of, okay.
It's starting quarterback money.
I know, but you can't. Okay, so what's the difference between starting quarterback money and franchise quarterback money, or am I parsing that too closely? Because I do think that there's a difference when people talk about that stuff.
Sure.
But, Gardner Minshew is not making Kirk Cousins money at present. You could point to Atlanta and say, well, they don't have a plan to play Michael Penix right away, and they took him 4 picks before Denver drafted Bo Nix. So why would there be any great hurry to get Bo Nix on the field if Atlanta's taking that kind of strategy? And I think that's situationally dependent. But Denver, I don't know, it seems like it might be a bit more open because Zach Wilson is a former 2nd overall pick. I think we get to a point with quarterbacks, do we consider Daniel Jones's problems to be fixable at this point in his career? Or has New York allowed him to just be battered for so long behind a terrible, terrible offensive line, for the most part, largely due to injury? They've spent draft capital, but it hasn't been able to fix the larger problem. Daniel Jones, I don't know if he's going to get any better, because he feels like a little, I don't want to say that he feels a little broken, but there's something about Daniel Jones that just doesn't feel like it's going to break through. Zach Wilson is also in a similar vein, where you're just watching him last year and you feel bad. You feel terrible for this person, because not only is the offensive coaching staff around him clearly incompetent after losing Aaron Rodgers, who is the play caller for the New York Jets. It's not Nathaniel Hackett. It's not Todd Downing. It's Aaron Rodgers. And so when that goes to hell, you lose your starting quarterback, who is also your offensive play caller, and you don't really seem to have a plan to get the best out of Zach Wilson, who also, by the way, is behind as bad an offensive line situation as Will Levis and Ryan Tannehill were last year. The Jets are nightmarish, and they may still be if the depth doesn't hold up the way that they've kind of set this up a little bit behind Tyron Smith, because they did draft Olaf Ashanu, 10th? I think
the Jets did.
Yes.
Yeah, the situation in Denver is really interesting, because if Zach Wilson is just continues to be Zach Wilson, and Bo Nix doesn't show any sort of signs in his rookie year, pressure's on, right?
Well,
sure. Next offseason.
The pressure is already on Sean Payton to make this work, because listen, they've done the thing, right? They ate the money that you asked them to eat to get rid of the quarterback that their GM screwed up on. So GM is the most or the hottest seat right now in Denver. So Sean Payton at least has a bit of a meat shield in the meantime. Now, you also buy yourself time with a rookie quarterback, and Denver has been in quarterback hell since Peyton Manning left, basically. But one of the first things, and take this for what it is, because it's not outright gospel, but it's pretty good feedback. The first thing that Cosell said to me after our first post-draft podcast was, the one I'm least concerned about is Bo Nix. He's going to make it because Sean Payton's there. So that's one NFL analyst giving his film-based opinion on player and scheme fit based on the coach. Doesn't mean that it's guaranteed to work, but just a little something to keep in the back of your mind. So then to Atlanta, because Atlanta is the one that you're still pissed about. I think even your Italian excursion and getting engaged over the course of the last 2 weeks still has you red hot about Michael Penix getting drafted 8th overall by the Falcons. So Kirk Cousins is paid $180 million on a 4-year deal. He's coming off the Achilles injury. He's 36 years old, and he's at least under the impression that because of the sum of money that he is being given, that he is Atlanta's quarterback. And then they do the thing which nobody had, which is taking Michael Penix 8th overall. And the whole football world throws its hands up in the air and says, you can't justify this at all. Even though I can a little bit in my head when I saw everybody bitching and moaning about this, all I could think of, but he's Kirk Cousins. Like, is Kirk Cousins so great or so much better than the most pro-ready of the quarterback prospects, according to all the analysts, that you're going to pass on the best quarterback there because Kirk Cousins is your quarterback? I understand Atlanta's draft, a lot of it doesn't make sense. So we'll see how all this plays out. There is the factor of Kirk Cousins' readiness. He's coming off the Achilles tear. He is, again, 36 years old. He is not participating in OTAs right now. So it's kind of Michael Penix's opportunity to earn trust from a new-ish coaching staff, because Raheem Morris has been there before, but to earn that trust to say, all right, if Kirk's not 100% ready to rock, let's roll the kid out there and see how it goes. I don't know how good the Falcons are going to be. So the interest level in them is probably going to be pretty low. One would think. But we said that about Tampa Bay last year, and all of a sudden Baker Mayfield is having a career year. So I'm kind of like, of all the NFL science experiments that are going on right now, the one in Atlanta at the quarterback spot, I think it's more interesting than Denver, just because, Kirk left Minnesota because they told him, hey, we're probably going to bring in a quarterback behind you. And he wasn't ready for that yet. And then he goes to Atlanta, and according to Diana Rossini, is taken aback by the idea that Atlanta took a quarterback at 8.
I get what your logic is, that are we really going to sit here and say Kirk Cousins at 36 coming off an Achilles is that much more of a sure thing than X next best QB prospect as a rookie?
Well, and let me say this. That's not to justify it. I'm just the only devil's advocate argument I could come up with in my head with is Kirk Cousins.
And it's fine to feel that way, but Atlanta didn't feel that way because they gave him $180 million. Yeah. This felt like a desperate attempt at, if Kirk doesn't work out, to keep our jobs in Atlanta. If Kirk doesn't work out, I feel like no matter what they did in the draft, this regime for the Falcons hinges on what happens with Kirk Cousins after giving him that deal. So I don't love them hedging their bets and sacrificing addressing needs elsewhere for your own competitive advantage to hedge your own bet in having that plan if your $180 million move doesn't work out. I don't love that. You paid $180 million for the 36-year-old quarterback. Your chips are in there. They're in there. So ride with that. And if I'm a Falcons fan, that's what I'd be saying. But we're talking about all of this, and we can't have this conversation without talking about the place Cousins left, right, in Minnesota.
Well, just quickly, before we move on, because this is just a quick point that I want to make, because this speaks to some of your larger frustration with the way that NFL teams go about doing this, the draft process anyway, as a college football person. If I told you that when Kirk Cousins got the money, the coaching staff was very new, and they were still getting settled. And as the coaching staff got caught up to speed on where the scouting staff was, they may have changed their position on how badly or how much they liked a quarterback in particular Michael Penix. Is that any kind of a justification? Not a justification, but an explanation that you'll buy that the coaching staff is coming to the scouting thing later, as these things typically go,
right,
and saying, well, wait, I really like this kid. If he's there, he should be here on our draft board, even though we just paid Kirk. Again, I'm just giving you more context.
Sure. It just doesn't, to me, doesn't change the circumstances of what you did. What you did is paid $180 million for a quarterback, right? There are several teams that have paid big money for a quarterback that probably were in a spot to draft a quarterback. Like Giants could have drafted a quarterback. They gave Daniel Jones that contract. I think they understand that regime probably hinges on what happens with Daniel Jones. Mm-hmm. So might as well try and help him out and maximize that as much as possible. Falcons did not go that route.
So to Minnesota, as you said, people making some comments on this topic. Emmett Jones says the mile-high elevation might help Zach Wilson. I don't know, maybe. It's not going to help him with his fear of getting hit, which it currently seems to be embedded in his soul based on playing for the Jets for the first couple of years of his career. Minnesota, though, they draft J.J. McCarthy. They do trade up slightly to get him, but not by much. And they have Sam Darnold on the roster.
On a 1-year, $10 million deal.
So he's getting decent money, and Sam Darnold is functional as an NFL quarterback. He's one of these guys who's going to continue to prolong and be in situations like this for years to come. McCarthy, though, is he the biggest unknown out of any of the 6 that went in the first round? As far as, like, percentage of snaps that you've actually seen him executing passing plays, is J.J. McCarthy the biggest unknown of these 6 that went in the first round?
I feel like he's the one that needed to land in the best situation because
more so than Jaden Daniels.
Because of the situation he's coming out of. Yeah, Jaden Daniels has shown us he can make the plays. I mean, he might get crushed a few times, but Jaden Daniels can get outside of the schedule, so to speak, within the offense and make things happen. I don't know that J.J. McCarthy can't, but we haven't seen it yet, and I think he's in a really solid situation. The big question for me is, who do the Titans see when they play the Vikings in 2024? Do they see Sam Darnold or do they see J.J. McCarthy?
It's like week 11, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit on the later side.
Lucas is doing his due diligence now a week later on the schedule because we're going to talk about the most interesting matchups on the Titans schedule. But next, what do you have?
Headlines. We have NFL headlines, OTAs, some interesting stuff, especially in Kansas City. Very newsy week for the Kansas City Chiefs, the defending Super Bowl champs.
Butker talk next.
We're getting close to lunchtime. It's the best time of the day. Hey, guys, it's Lucas Panzika. The good news, Hattie B's opens in 20 minutes at 5 of their 6 locations: Lower Broadway, Melrose, Midtown, Nashville West, and the Nashville Airport. But the factory at Franklin is already open. It's been open since 7 a.m. because the factory at Franklin, that Hattie B's location, is doing breakfast, and it is fantastic. Classic hot chicken biscuit, the pimento cheese and hot chicken, the hot chicken and waffle stack, crispy hash browns with the drinking buddy beer cheese, or the bacon cheddar grits. You cannot go wrong. Of course, Hattie B's has you covered for lunch, too. A family-run restaurant serving up your favorite Southern food, an authentic Nashville hot chicken. You know it's the best in town. They hand-bread their fried chicken, cooked to order. Add your spice level, whatever works for you. Hot or not, you want to go mild, medium, all the way up to shut the cluck up. Do your thing with your favorite piece of chicken, from tender sandwich wings or a half bird. I'm craving it just talking about it, and Hattie B's has the best sides in town. You download the Hattie B's app today. You can skip the line, walk in, get your Hattie B's famous hot chicken, and head back to the office. Oh, by the way, you get a free dessert immediately just by downloading the app. So do it today and go get your lunch at Hattie B's.
So what is this, just general headlines? Well, you don't get enough airtime? Now you want headlines? You want more designated segments since you're in here?
I want more.
Okay. What do you got?
And I want to wait to talk about Harrison Butker. Can we do a little bit of actual football first?
Yeah, even though the misogynistic kicker carried the day across NFL media, sure, we can start somewhere else.
So, a lot going on in Kansas City. And we talked about the receivers that were not participating in OTAs yesterday. Justin Jefferson, T. Higgins, who has requested a trade, has not signed his franchise tender. One wide receiver that has been participating in OTAs is Rashee Rice, who we expect, right, to get some sort of suspension from the NFL. Now, there are reports that he will not be charged from the alleged assault that took place in Dallas. That's besides the car wreck that happened that he abandoned the scene from. So the punishment for Rashee Rice likely will be from the NFL, right? But he's in Kansas City and he's practicing at OTAs.
Yes, no. It's yes, no. It is fair to expect that the NFL will have a punishment probably before the legal system works this situation out for Rashee Rice. So I would expect, at some point, and I should check the timeline on these things as far as like what happens to when a player has a situation in the offseason. Is that something that's handed down? Do they wait till the legal situation has a little more clarity, and they conduct their own investigations and there are certain standards according to the NFL personal conduct policy that'll cost him a couple of games. The thing that the NFL is kind of working through, though, that's interesting to keep in mind on this is the gambling punishments have been a lot more harsh than the punishments for more serious infractions. So now that that's pretty prevalent, I think the NFL has to kind of take a step back and has been taking a step back because they did with NPF and several other players, depending on the severity, right? Taking more context into it, but this is a pretty cut and dry situation. So I'd expect Rashee Rice to miss some time at the beginning of the season, and the Chiefs clearly do as well based on their draft and free agency moves.
Real quick, also another legal matter here. Brody Miller of The Athletic, covers golf for The Athletic, just tweeted that charges against Scotty Scheffler will not be dropped at this time as the judicial process continues. LPD says there is still no video of the initial incident, just poll footage of the arrest. And Officer Brian Gillis, who made the arrest, has received, quote, corrective action for not turning his body camera on during the incident.
Ooh, yeah, because that's the other thing. We should have body cam footage of this, which makes it that much more nebulous. So they're going to keep the charges against him?
They just haven't been dropped to this point.
Okay.
That's the Scotty Scheffler update of the day. Back to Kansas City, Xavier Worthy.
You don't want to stay there for a second? You don't think that's
Scotty
interesting
Scheffler?
at all that they haven't been dropped yet?
I guess they're just...
That's a pretty big story.
Not having the body cam footage, I suppose, complicates things, right?
Sure.
They will not be dropped at this time. They're saying the judicial process continues. That's the report from Brody Miller.
Okay. We'll keep you updated on that. I just think it's fascinating. They have to have more... I guess they have to have more concrete evidence without the body cam footage. So that's kind of the thing that Louisville Police Department has to work through themselves before they can finish their investigation on what exactly happened with Scotty Scheffler. Because it sounds like he got directions from two different police officers, one saying, okay, you're good, the other one saying, no, wait. And he's probably just sweating and trying to figure out how he's going to get to work on time to make sure he made his round at Valhalla. But anyway, we'll keep you updated.
Back in Kansas City, it's been an interesting week in Kansas City. Xavier Worthy with a hamstring strain, according to Andy Reid. He did not practice at OTAs Wednesday. The receiver they drafted out of Texas in the first round, trading up to get him in a trade with the Bills. And Chiefs offensive lineman, Wanye Morris, Tennessee legend, and I do not want to butcher this name, Chukwubuka Godric,
depth tackle,
were cited for marijuana possession last Thursday. And immediately the question popped into my mind, wait a minute, who's going to play left tackle for the Chiefs this season? Is it going to be the rookie out of BYU?
He's in a competition with Wanye Morris.
It was Donovan Smith last year on a one-year deal, and he is not a Kansas City Chief. So I wonder how much of a point of concern that is right now in Kansas City.
It's a huge concern, but the thing that helps you a little bit is that Patrick Mahomes does not take sacks. So you're going to have a little bit of a buffer for whomever plays offensive line. It's not quite like Brady, where Brady made offensive linemen better just because the ball is coming out so much faster than your typical NFL quarterback was at the time. But yeah, to look at the depth chart, Kingsley Suamataia is probably going to have the inside track to the starting job. Though I don't think like a marijuana citation is not the end of the world. The NFL is way less harsh now that it's legalized, and I think almost every NFL state, save Texas, Tennessee, Indiana. There's a couple.
Elsewhere, Colts receiver Michael Pittman was hurt his knee in practice Wednesday, but reportedly is going to be okay. And Deshaun Watson is back in the fold. He's at OTAs in Cleveland, throwing every other day as part of the rehab for his shoulder. So remind me who the backup is right now in Cleveland, since Joe Flacco is now a Colt.
Winston.
Jameis.
It is Jameis. It's Jameis Winston.
Yeah.
So after the bailout...
Which, by the way, shame on the Browns. Like, I love Jameis. I would have died to have Jameis Winston here for no other reason than just pure entertainment value. I'm sorry. I gotta have it. All right. I gotta have the Jameis Winston interview. But like, shame on the Browns for being so threatened by Joe Flacco at 40 years old after he earned that backup quarterback job to send him on. And he got paid by Indianapolis, but whatever. But like, he sounded pretty surprised that he wasn't back in Cleveland after he carried their asses to a playoff game. He didn't play well in the playoff game. So you understand a little bit of hesitation about the 40-year-old Flacco. But that Deshaun Watson would need Mr. 30 for 30 to come in and be his backup just so there's no question about who the starting quarterback is hilarious to me.
Well, Joe Flacco provided the bailout of all bailouts for any NFL coaching staff last season, right? The Browns season was going down the drain. Nick Chubb injured. They had other significant injuries. Watson wasn't playing well, and that was before he was injured. So where does the bailout come this year? If Deshaun Watson continues to be the Deshaun Watson we've seen since he arrived in Cleveland, and Jameis Winston is the backup, which at this point we feel like we know what Jameis Winston is as a backup quarterback. Granted, we said that about Joe Flacco.
No.
Oh, you were inspired about Joe Flacco, huh? You predicted all the Joe Flacco success.
No, but Joe Flacco's been a Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah,
okay,
fair,
Joe Flacco has been a good quarterback.
Yeah, he's also like 40.
I know.
I get what you're saying.
But like the older quarterbacks can age. Okay, and I know 40 is like pushing it. Like
he was at home watching Frasier when they called him.
I understand that. By the way, I love Frasier. I think that might be the oldest thing about me is how much I love Frasier.
Greatest spin-off show of all time?
Ooh. That's a great
conversation.
That's a great
conversation for another day, I suppose.
Summer, tune in when we've officially run out of football things to talk about. No, but Jameis has always been this. Flacco has had moments of legit greatness.
Yeah.
It's Joe Flacco and Joe Montana tied for the record of most touchdowns without an interception in a Super Bowl run en route to winning the MVP. He was excellent. And I know he has moments that make you crazy, and he does have turnovers because he's just ripping it, but not like Jameis. Not where you're talking about making jokes about corrective LASIK surgery, trying to fix Jameis on 30 for 30. I watched him during that season, okay? He was a disaster. The amount of hair I saw the Tampa PR staff pulling out of their heads in the press box that season because Tennessee played Tampa here. We talked about that last week, Jackson. Brett Kern almost died in that game.
Yeah, tough day for Brett Kern.
Tough day.
Devin Whiteout broke his jaw.
Those are the headlines, and I've successfully brought us up against the break without talking about Harrison Butker. And everybody's being asked about Harrison Butker. And that's it. We're out of time.
We're going to start our NFL team series, especially teams on the Titans schedule. Just a quick refresh on what's going around in the NFL. The Buffalo Bills have a lot of interesting headlines to discuss, so we'll talk about them within the context of the Titans coming up next.
It is 11:01. Good afternoon. No, good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica. College baseball, Vanderbilt routed Tennessee and Hoover on Wednesday, 13-4 in the SEC tournament, throwing 8 pitchers in the loss, did the Vols. Tennessee now 1 loss from elimination in Hoover. They will face Texas A&M this afternoon at 1 p.m. Vandy moves on. They play Mississippi State tonight at 8. NBA playoffs. The Mavericks took game 1 of the Western Conference Finals at the T-Wolves, 108-106. Luka Doncic, 33 points. And in the NHL, the Florida Panthers took game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals at the Rangers 2-0. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Welcome in on this Thursday. We're happy to have you. The show is fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. You know this. If you're thinking about lunch, think about some Hattie B's Hot Chicken. I saw some people in the chat already where you can interact with the show on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, advocating for more Hattie B's locations to serve the breakfast menu, which you can only get at the factory in Franklin. Lucas is a big fan of that, as am I. We're big fans of football, and that's why we're going to go team by team over the course of the next couple of weeks. Now, it's not going to be like a lazy offseason preview segment. We got certain constructs that we want to play this game by. So it's going to work out to where we do about a division a week, and we're going to do it in the 11 o'clock hour every day for the next couple of days except for Wednesday, because you know we got the dumbest thing in sports this week. And I want to start with the Bills, not just because they're on the Titans' schedule, but because the AFC East is a pretty compelling division, and they should be the favorites again to win the division, though that has become much more in question in the last couple of years. Now, the Titans will see Buffalo later in the year, though not too late to where the weather at Highmark Stadium should be a massive factor. They'll play the Bills in October. But since they've fired their offensive coordinator and named Joe Brady the OC, which was, I don't know, some point in November, December for the Buffalo Bills, you saw a legit change with the offense. You saw them get Josh Allen to play more in structure. And in some cases, Josh Allen almost be too conservative in moments until the end of games where they may need to press after they've been executing these long drives. You're seeing Josh Allen executing much more in the short and intermediate range as opposed to just bombing it down the field or taking the football themselves. They've been trying consistently to build a running game there. They had to clear a ton of salary cap this offseason in Buffalo after they released Jordan Poyer, Mitch Morse, Naheem Hines. They released Tre'Davious White as well. They designated him as a post-June 1 release. So a lot of guys who have been there for several years, and they did retain some of their own dudes. They lose players like Gabe Davis, who, you know, could be the best receiver on the Bills any given week, but far less consistent. And Stephon Diggs gets traded to the Houston Texans. So now the Tennessee Titans will see Diggs twice a year. So here's the way that we're going to do this game for every team over the course of the next couple of months. Contender or pretender, Buffalo Bills. We're going to go around the room. Jackson, you start. Contender or pretender?
Contender.
Why?
As long as they have Josh Allen.
As long as they have Josh Allen.
They're going to be a contender.
Josh Allen is
the
ranked
second best quarterback in the league.
No question between Josh Allen and Joe Burrow.
No, not at this time.
Lucas?
Pretender. This is not a contending roster. I think the moves they made signaled that. This feels like a kind of step back and then rear up for a longer stretch with Josh Allen as your long-term quarterback. Josh Allen isn't enough for me to sit here and say contender. How many AFC championships have the Bills reached with Josh Allen?
One,
right? So
they lost.
And they lost.
Because the only two quarterbacks to beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs are the greatest quarterback in the history of the sport, Tom Brady, and Joe Burrow.
If Keon Coleman does not turn into something, if Keon Coleman is not a offensive rookie of the year candidate.
Sure.
As the Bills wide receiver, then this is one of the more pedestrian wide receiver cores in the NFL. I mean, you're talking about Khalil Shakir, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Chase Claypool, Curtis Samuel, Matt Collins. Like, without knowing what Keon Coleman is, other than a great quote. And
Pedestrian's pretty kind to that group, by the way.
Sure. Is Dalton Kincaid the most reliable receiver on that team right now? The tight end?
And that can work. There's a very famous example of that just won back-to-back Super Bowls and has won three in the last 5 years with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. So it's not totally unthinkable that could carry the day.
Buffalo is not better. In no way is Buffalo better. And they did what they had to do, right? A lot of cap-cutting moves in the trade. To trade Stephon Diggs, I think signals more than just clearing cap room. Like, I think they're trying to move out of that era. But 2024 is not the year for the Buffalo Bills.
Okay, but here's the thing. I'm going to say contender. I'm going to go along with Jackson while acknowledging that I don't think they're a better football team. But in order for me to consider them a pretender, I have to buy one of the other teams in the AFC East right now. And I think the Dolphins are a paper tiger. And I think that the Jets are one hamstring, ACL, rotator cuff away from just abject disaster, because that is the all IR team if I've ever seen it. They are going all in on a 40-year-old quarterback who's coming off an Achilles injury. I honestly know Aaron Rodgers pisses a lot of people off, and he pisses me off a lot, but I don't want to see him not succeed, because when he's great, he's excellent. And New York would be fun. New York as being in the mix, the Jets actually being viable for once, that would be fun. It would be different. God knows. When was the last time they were truly relevant? Rex Ryan and Mark Sanchez? It's been a minute.
We'll see them here. Home opener.
Or early enough. Will Aaron Rodgers be playing by week 2? Who's to say? So, in order for me, because another part of this is, are we buying or selling their offseason, which plays into this. I'm selling their offseason, but I'm still taking them as a contender because I don't trust the rest of it. The Patriots, what am I going to do with the Patriots this year? Now, maybe they're one of these teams. Can you imagine if the Patriots go worst to first this year? I can't imagine them being the one, but it's always the ones that you don't expect, Tampa Bay.
It's fine if you think the Bills are going to be the best team in the AFC South, but that's not a good enough reason for me, or excuse me, AFC East. What did I say? South. But that's not a good enough reason for me to call them Super Bowl contenders just because you like them more than any other team in their division, then they're Super Bowl contenders, just like that?
Yeah, if they're favored to win Lucas, I'll do this with you again.
Do we have to have this argument again?
No, we don't, but I just understand for the audience, we'll reset that our qualifications are a little different, all right? Lucas is less literal about contender than I am. My position is if you win your division, if you make the postseason, you're contending for a Super Bowl. We don't have to get bogged down in the facts. I don't want to argue Kenny Pickett, Pittsburgh Steelers with you anymore. I don't.
Were the Browns with Joe Flacco a contender last year?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
The way that Joe Flacco was playing before the playoff game? Hell yes.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that. But my issue that I took with him, Jackson, with this discussion was the Steelers. Like acting like the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I'm not doing
Mason
it
Rudolph
again.
at quarterback.
I'm not doing it
Super Bowl
again.
contender.
I'm not doing it again.
So whoever wins the NFC South is a Super Bowl contender, Buck, because they won the NFC South.
Why are you so far away from your microphone?
I don't know why I like to do that sometimes.
The Bucs won a playoff game last year.
Eat it.
They beat the Eagles, the defending NFC champ.
Correct. Football is weird, bud. Anyway, I think, okay, so I'm selling their offseason while maintaining that they are a contender because overall, the quarterback is the most important thing, and I'm with Jackson. I would take Josh Allen over Joe Burrow for the same reason I believe Josh Allen to be more talented than Patrick Mahomes. And we're going to have this discussion about the difference between Will Levis and Joe Burrow later. Mahomes is the more skilled quarterback. Josh Allen is the greater talent. And I think that is the thing that hangs me up on Josh Allen over Joe Burrow or Lamar. I think certainly deserves to be in this discussion about the best quarterbacks in football right now. Josh Allen is less skilled, but so talented that you have to fear him at any point. Lucas, he is a menace. You cannot stop him. You can try and stop him throwing the football, and he's going to throw it through your chest. You can try and stop him running the football, but he's bigger and faster and stronger than you. And while that can't last forever, Cam Newton is a great example of that. And what's the best comparison that we have for Josh Allen today? Cam Newton. He's a more accurate Cam Newton.
Is this the worst surrounding situation he's had
100%.
So if he hasn't been able to get there to this point, I don't understand the logic of calling them a contender with his worst situation, just in terms of personnel.
By that logic, nobody's getting out of the AFC this year because it's just Mahomes' conference to lose. But I'm going to take the second most talented guy and say, yeah, he's going to give him a run because he has. He's pushed him. He hasn't broken through yet. Burrow has. That's a legitimate difference. But even Joe hasn't done it that often.
Josh Allen is definitely a contender to win you your fantasy championship. I'll give you that. Interesting signing, not worth the breaking news sounder, but the Philadelphia Eagles have signed wide receiver John Ross to a 1-year deal.
We need like a crappy news sounder.
Yeah.
Well, no, the Laser Light Show is the crappy news sounder.
Yeah, but that's like something significant has happened. We need a breaking news sounder for like the Laser Light Show.
I want to relegate the Laser Light Show. I hate the Laser Light Show.
I love the Laser Light Show.
It makes me so angry.
The Laser Light Show is like, oh, something happened. Something of note, something intriguing. We need a breaking news sounder for breaking news that really doesn't mean that much, like the Eagles signing John Ross, who has not played a snap of NFL football since 2021.
Oh, has it been that long?
That long. He was not on a team in 2022. He was briefly a Chiefs practice squatter in 2023. He informed the Chiefs, actually, last summer in July that he was retiring. They placed him on the reserve retired list, and he is now signing a 1-year deal with the Philadelphia Eagles. Remember, John Ross, who broke the 40 record before being drafted by the Bengals and then flaming out, not doing anything in his time in Cincinnati.
Third receiver in that draft. That was Corey Davis's draft, who ironically did the same thing. Didn't Corey go on the reserve retired list with the Jets, and now he wants to come back? Not to New York necessarily, but
Corey did go on the reserve retired list.
I saw some reports out there about him being open to the right situation because he built a house here in Tennessee.
The Jets released him from the reserve retired list over a week ago.
That's ironic that the two of them would have that, and now one of them is back in New York, and Mike Williams, who, again, is a part of the All-IR team. So we'll do the team series thing. Again, Tennessee and Buffalo will play this season at Highmark Stadium. The last time the Titans were there, it was Monday Night Football, and it was a slaughter, like 42-7, if I remember correctly, the way that played out. But that was also a nightmare scenario where you saw Lawan's knee go out on the very first offensive snap of the game, and Malik Willis just get in garbage time and not have much of a puncher's chance from there. Coming up next, we'll revisit the result from the baseball game last night in the SEC tournament. Vanderbilt spanking the Vols. Mike Wilson of the Knoxville News Sentinel was on the scene in Hoover. He will join us coming up next. We doing Paramore all day? That makes me happy. I love that. Are you sticking with a theme? Or are you just being lazy? What's happening?
I decided it was going to be a Paramore day today. When I saw it, I just randomly saw it in the system, so I decided it's going to be a Paramore day today.
Excellent.
So being lazy. I love it. Sticking to a theme by being lazy.
No, because I like it, I will say that Jackson is working smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
When you do it, it's laziness. But now that's not your problem anymore.
Double standards.
I don't know why I was giving out the phone line. Speaking of lazy, let's mail in our baseball coverage and let's bring in Mike Wilson of the Knoxville News Sentinel, who joins us from Hoover, Alabama. Vols get spanked at the hands of the Vanderbilt Commodores last night. Mike, what the hell?
Well, let me just begin this, Buck, by saying I was thinking about you yesterday when I knew I was coming on, and I was thinking about the time you wove your own shoes for Madison Blevins Hawk's birthday party. And I just really, and there's nothing lazy about that. We'll put it that way.
Listen, if you want a pair, what do they call them, huaraches or something like that? I will get you a pair, Mike. They're perfect.
Yeah, and as for Tennessee baseball, yeah, not a banner day, but also kind of an understandable outcome with the way that Tennessee approached pitching yesterday, and that's not an excuse for what the Vols did, but I do think there's an extent to which Tony Vitello and his staff are approaching this Hoover tournament as all right, well, let's figure out what depth we have with the pitching staff, because it hasn't been a deep staff through the season, so let's see where those final pieces might be before going into the postseason, where you might have to call upon some of those guys.
Well, and that is an acceptable strategy, even if you get lit up in the process, and it hurts more because, like we talked about to open the show, Mike, anytime a Vanderbilt fan can stick a thumb in the eye of a Tennessee fan, especially with that kind of just lopsided result, you take advantage and you do so. But it's not the end of the world for Tennessee. Even though you don't like the way that it played itself out. There's still some obvious things that they need to clean up there, but it's not the worst strategic decision, or at least the worst strategic idea, even if the decision didn't exactly go in their favor.
Yeah, the outcome stinks. That is what it is. But that to me was not the main concern coming out of yesterday. I mean, a loss to Vanderbilt in the SEC tournament is what it is. But to me, the concern was, again, if you're trying to find out what your pitching depth is, yikes. I mean, you leave yesterday saying, Nate Snead and Kirby Connell are going to throw on the weekends. A.J. Russell threw a nice inning. Adding him back to the mix is a big deal. But I don't think any of those other guys made a case you can trust them at a big moment in the postseason if you need them. Maybe Andrew Benke, Marcus Phillips, Dylan Loy on the fringe at best. But most of those guys showed that they're not guys that you're going to lean on in moments in the NCAA tournament. And Tennessee does not have the deepest pitching staff. That's been the case all season since A.J. Russell went down. And, heck, you could argue they were thin before A.J. Russell went down. So that to me was more the concern than the outcome, because call it what it is. Tennessee threw a midweek game yesterday against a team that's not a midweek opponent.
Anything to be made of the 2-game losing streak to Vanderbilt specifically?
Not really. I mean, Thompson threw a tremendous game in Nashville. I do think maybe the only commonality of concern is just that in those 2 games, Tennessee's offense hasn't been tremendous. And I think that's kind of a sneaky growing theme, that they aren't getting steady production across the top 6 like they had been through much of the year. It's a lot of Christian Moore, a lot of Dylan Dreiling. I think you want to see more out of Blake Burke and Billy Amick than you have recently. I mean, both having tremendous seasons, but feels like there hasn't been the consistency out of some of those guys they had early in the year. But as for those 2 losses, not really. I mean, Tennessee went up against a guy who shoved in Nashville in that loss to Thompson on the Sunday, and yesterday Vanderbilt was just better. I mean, they had better arms, they hit better, and that was that.
At By Mike Wilson is where you can follow our friend Mike Wilson of the Knoxville News Sentinel. KnoxNews.com is where you can read his coverage from Hoover, where he continues to cover the Vols in the SEC tournament.
And a congratulations to Mike Wilson, who we have not spoken with since he got married in late April, Mike. Very, very happy for you.
Oh, congrats, Mike.
Well, thank you, Lucas. I was just trying to get in ahead of you since, you went and got engaged now off in Italy. So I needed to not get married after you because that would have been embarrassing for me.
Well, I was only congratulating you in hopes that you would in return congratulate me on my engagement.
Which he did not do, which makes me love Mike even more.
Thank you for that quid pro quo. So the offense, though, not really registering as a concern for you, Mike, because we could talk about the pitching and rolling out the midweek staff and all of that, but also Tennessee wasn't able to keep up in a game that they allowed 13 runs in, which we've seen them do in the past. But is that one of those things that you don't have a ton of concern about it sort of correcting itself along the way in the postseason?
I think you'd call that maybe a simmering concern at this point, just again, because I think lost in the shuffle of how many home run hits and what Christian Moore has done is again, the fact that the lineup's been the top six. The bottom three hasn't really produced any semblance of consistent offense throughout the whole season, really. But the top six hasn't been as steady lately either. Hunter Ensley's really coming on nicely. Moore is an absolute beast. Dylan Dreiling had a great SEC campaign, but Tiers, Burke, and Amick, I think you see more consistency out of those three guys because those are three really important bats to Tennessee, especially as you head into the postseason. So you do want to see better offense. They're going up against an absolute stud today for Texas A&M. So what are you going to get in that game? Can you kind of feel better about your offense going into the postseason? But then again, Tennessee got one hit by Texas A&M in a 3-0 loss in the SEC tournament last year, and then went to Omaha. So sometimes things just sort themselves out like that.
Mike, I don't know what the daily access situation for you guys is with Vitello or with the team, but is there any discussion of that last year result against Texas A&M heading into this game? Was there any discussion of it last night?
There wasn't, just because at that point,
right, they didn't have the opponent
yet. Play today.
Yeah,
that was the later game, and obviously the focus to me and probably everyone last night was, man, sure you got spanked by Vanderbilt, but AJ Russell's back. And again, just with how the rest of the pitching went yesterday, I think you saw why that's so important, because that's a guy you can add to the mix. You saw guys you don't think you can add to the mix, but you can add AJ Russell to the mix, and that's going to be a big deal in the postseason if things go off schedule or someone else struggles. You've got that option now that you haven't had for the past 2 months.
So what do you make of the pitching matchup today against A&M, a team Tennessee hasn't seen since that SEC tournament loss last year, and just the gauntlet that is the losers bracket in the SEC tournament right now?
Yeah, the top four seeds went 0-4, got clean swept yesterday. I think that obviously tells you how tough the SEC is, but that's not telling you anything you didn't already know. It's a Friday night matchup. It's Tennessee going with its Friday night opener and Chris Stamos, and Texas A&M throwing its horse in Ryan Prager, second-team All-SEC guy who had a tremendous year. This is a Game 1 matchup, and that's what you want to see. That's what both these teams were angling toward when they didn't throw their top guys yesterday in their openers in Hoover. So you're getting it today. The losers bracket in this morning session is absolutely electric.
So, obviously, over here in Nashville, we get the Tennessee and Vandy fans going back and forth after every time they play. And for Vandy fans, it's, rightfully about the fact that Tennessee has not won a national title, that has not had the success in Omaha that Vandy has had in the Corbin era, despite Tennessee's recent regular season success against Vanderbilt. Do you feel like there is an element of pressure right now with that program in not just getting to, but finding more success at the College World Series? Do you sense that at all, whether it's in the fan base or within the locker room?
I'm sure it's somewhere in the fan base. Teams always want to go win it all, right? That's not exactly a groundbreaking thing that teams want to win it all. Tennessee has taken steps when they've gotten to Omaha. They obviously went 0-2 the first year, which was a bit of a surprise year anyway, getting there. Took a step by winning a game last year, and, you wanted to do more last year with the team you had, but call it what it is. Whatever team was opening against Paul Skeens was getting straight to the losers bracket. And Tennessee was the unfortunate team that had to face Skeens in Game 1. They probably would have made more noise there last year if not for that matchup, so that's a bummer. But, yeah, at some point you want to play deeper into that tournament. You got to have the pitching to do it. You've got to stay hot to do it. And Tennessee's had opportunities. Obviously, 2022 didn't make it there. you can hypothetical it all you want, but I don't think it's a bold proclamation to say that team would have made a lot of noise had it gotten to Omaha. So, but they're in the mix, and it's kind of steal from Rick Barnes. You got to be in the mix, and Tennessee knows it's in the mix in baseball as much as it is in basketball. So, got to get there to have a shot.
No, and that makes sense, and I don't think it's an apt comparison or too close of a parallel between like Barnes and Vitello, for example, because Barnes obviously has a much longer career and a much greater sample size, specifically with Tennessee. But, I mean, like you mentioned, there's probably somewhere in the fan base some sense of, well, Tony's not doing this enough or not doing this correctly, or he's making certain changes that he shouldn't be in game, whatever the case may be. From the way that you see it, though, Mike, how much of this is specifically on his shoulders versus the performance of the team? Because obviously those things are correlated. He's tasked with getting the best version of them, but how much is he helping versus hindering, in your opinion?
I mean, first off, you have to caveat any complaint about what Tony Vitello does and does not do with what Tennessee baseball was before he was hired, because Tennessee baseball couldn't even spell Omaha before Tony Vitello was hired. So you have to give it that caveat no matter what, because any displeasure kind of has to have that understanding of it of, wow, you're complaining about what this program is now when 7 years ago, this team couldn't even make it to Hoover, let alone into Omaha. So there is that element. I think.
Well, wait, Mike, if I can just stop you there quickly, how long do you get to have that, though? Like, how long do you get to cling to? Oh, do you know what it was before? Because I'm not saying that he hasn't still earned that 100%, but like in the NFL, coaches get, 3 years now to try and turn this stuff around? And I know the leash is shorter in a lot of other places, college football most certainly, but how much longer do you get to use that, okay, but the program was this before I got here?
That's a great question. I don't know that I have an answer for, because the reality is this program was nowhere. Facilities-wise, recruiting-wise, I mean, it was in a really rough place. So you definitely get longer because of that. But all of this said, I think the one thing that fans can always, and opposing fans are always going to point to, is not getting to Omaha in 2022. I think Tony Vitello would probably say it. I think a lot of people would say it. Not pulling Chase Burns sooner in that game is probably one that lingers to some extent. With leaving him in allowed that Notre Dame team to come back and win that final game. So that was tough there. But I mean, Tennessee's in the national title hunt every single season right now with the way they're recruiting, the way they play, the way they perform. That's because of Tony Vitello and Frank Anderson and Josh Elander. I mean, that assistant coaching staff has been absolutely tremendous because, again, this pitching staff's thin and they're performing at an incredibly high level. I'd argue it's Frank Anderson's best job at Tennessee in terms of what he's done with this staff, because the overall performance is much better than the individual pieces, I think. And Josh Elander, I think, will be a coveted guy for some head coaching jobs this offseason. So Tennessee's got it in a really good spot. Do you want to win more at some point? Of course, but what fan base doesn't want to win more?
Mike Wilson of Knox News with us. Mike, I know you are fully immersed in baseball mode at the moment, but obviously all eyes are on Chaz Lanier, the transfer prospect for Tennessee basketball, highly coveted across the country, Nashville native. What is the latest in terms of just a timeline on when we may get an update on if Tennessee basketball will land the transfer?
And why are you letting Richard G. West break more news than you?
Yeah, that guy kicks my butt in a lot of things, so I don't really have an excuse for that. Must have better sources. Lanier got in late Monday, early hours Tuesday morning, spent the day Tuesday visiting Tennessee. From all accounts I've gathered, the visit went great. Whole family was in town, mom, dad, siblings. Seemed like everything went really smoothly from Tennessee's perspective. I'd assume a decision's not so far off, just given that there's deadlines coming up to withdraw from the NBA draft, which my assumption is that will happen with Chaz Lanier. I do think he visited BYU. I think it's a Kentucky-Tennessee battle. I'm sure there's some big NIL numbers being talked about somewhere in all of this. I think as far as Tennessee's pitch goes, you've got the Dalton Connect factor. You've also got a much more established situation, I think, than Kentucky does right now in terms of the pieces on the roster and having an established program opposed to a new coach. So I'm sure that's part of what Tennessee pitched to Chaz Lanier.
Engagement advice for Lucas before you leave.
Don't care about anything.
Oh, I'm so good at that.
I was about to say, God, you're built for this.
So
Yeah, the more you care, the harder it's going to be. Trust your fiance. Her vision is better than yours in every single way. I can tell you that when we got to our wedding day, I saw everything that Emily had done, and it was mind-blowing. She is far superior to me in every single way, and the sooner you accept that, the better off you'll be.
Oh, I'm good. I'm golden.
Yeah, I think he's in perfect shape for this.
Box checked.
At by Mike Wilson is where you can follow his continued coverage of Tennessee's work in the SEC tournament. Again, game 2 for the Vols is this afternoon, right after we wrap up, as a matter of fact, 1 p.m. Central Time on the SEC Network. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you, guys.
It's Mike Wilson with us from somewhere on the highways of Hoover, Alabama. Always fun when I can hear the turn signal in the background. Makes me happy.
Good he's using it. Safe driving. When we were organizing this yesterday, we set up a 10:20 time, then he changed it to 11:20, and he told me, just trying to prepare you for marriage where things change like that for no reason. So, but I told him I like not being in charge of anything in my life. It takes the pressure off. So I think I'm going to be very well suited for this, actually.
Your lifelong philosophy of just letting the world happen around you is going to pay such dividends in ways that I could have never expected. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to join the discussion. Sean is retired. He's up next.
Hey, guys, just want to give my kudos out to Cheeseburger.
Yes.
He called that Tennessee game yesterday. Buck, between Lucas and Cheeseburger, brother, I've been looking behind my back. Somebody's on your tail.
I
y'all have a good one.
I always am, Sean. Cheeseburger is my greatest threat.
The dark horse.
We'll never see him coming. And he says it but he tells me every time, Lucas and Buck and Cheeseburger. So I'm wise to you, Cheeseburger, but he absolutely did call his shot. He said that Vandy was going to pull it off. And he is, I think he's been pretty, how you become a Vanderbilt fan, a Florida State fan, and a Titans fan, all in one.
What a smorgasbord.
How you said that word correctly and not hullabaloo is hilarious.
Words are my job, Buck.
If only you were better. 615-737-1045 is the number. The NFL meetings are here in Nashville. What is the latest news? We'll give it to you coming up next. So we've got the NFL meetings, the third round of NFL meetings in Nashville this week, as a matter of fact. So they're wrapping up. Roger Goodell spoke yesterday on a variety of different topics. The biggest headlines, locally, the biggest headline was Jimmy Wyatt was there and he spoke to Goodell about a Super Bowl in Nashville. And the main takeaway is NFL loves Nashville, but still too far out. They've got the next 3 Super Bowls scheduled, so still too far out before you can really start talking about concrete, like real plans to have a Super Bowl in Nashville. And that's been the company line from the Titans, too. I think every time Burke Nihill's been asked about it, he's stressed how good their relationship with the league is. And obviously, they've found the league sees the massive amount of value in Nashville and how much Nashville has changed about the way that the NFL conducts league events, like, for example, the draft, which is now one of the crown jewels of the televised offseason. So that is only a matter of time and, no sooner than 2029, because that's typically the timeline for teams who open new stadiums 2 years after the fact. They are then eligible to host the Super Bowl. So it's a flashy headline. It catches a lot of people's attention, and it's obviously a fair thing for Jimmy to pursue. But Goodell didn't give him too much information, too much concrete information on it. Now, league-wide, he addressed the possibility of an 18-game regular season schedule in the future. And the other thing that is not going to, I don't think, catch a lot of casual fans' attention, because, Lucas, when I say to you, the prospect of private equity in ownership in NFL franchises, does that strike you any way at all?
Say it again.
The prospect of private equity firms having a stake in an NFL team. That's not been, so like a firm, not a person, having a stake in an NFL ownership group. Does that mean anything to you at all?
I know that it's being considered, right?
And that's not something that they've ever done before, but where the values of these, so what the least valuable NFL franchise I think right now is projected as the Cincinnati Bengals, and it's still worth almost, if not $5 billion, it's pretty close to $5 billion. I think it might even be a little over, but still ballpark $4 to $5 billion range is the cheapest NFL franchise, or the least valuable NFL franchise. And I have a buddy that works in private equity in Los Angeles, and they were talking, last time we were together, I was asking him questions about, like, are you guys interested in sports? Like, is that something that you are willing to come in and consider and trying to make a more profitable business? Because that's basically what they're doing. They're coming in to a business. They're finding a way to maximize the margins on things. And the first thing that he texted me back about the NFL and closing in on rules allowing private equity funds to purchase up to 30% of teams is cost-cutting incoming, which is not great if you're an NFL. I don't know. I think you're going to see some repercussions of that if you're an NFL fan in terms of all the different experiences that you might otherwise be provided. But it's just something to keep an eye on the actual business of the way that these franchises are run. Maybe that's too in the weeds and it's not concrete yet, so maybe too much to think about, or something that you're not ready to think about or not interested in thinking about until it actually affects you. But I do think that that's significant because it's going to allow a lot more interests to pursue NFL ownership and dictate the directions of these clubs.
What's also interesting is the idea of expanding the regular season, which Goodell also talked about the other day.
Yep. Which was an inevitability. They're not going to make more than the maximum 20 total games that players can play, and that's always been the case. They've just shortened the preseason and expanded the regular season, and I'm sure if the league could, they'd just go 20 straight regular season games and ride it out.
You see a future where that's the case, where there's no preseason at all and just jump right in, 20 games?
I would be shocked if they got rid of every exhibition game. Like, there needs to be one preseason game, but the counter, for no other reason than it's a ton of job opportunities that are on the line for dudes who are making up the bottom third of rosters everywhere. It's a good opportunity for you to get your quarterback live game rates. Like, there is value in an exhibition game. It's just how much more valuable is the second preseason game and the third preseason game.
Like losing the fourth one already cut back on opportunities for those lower-end roster churn guys.
Now, if I'm the players' union and you're already, because whatever you say about considering health and safety, more football is not good for the human body. But there's always going to be a market for more football. The NFL is going to try to play on every day of the week if they can, and they're already creeping further and further into our lives with, what do we have, Black Friday's games and now an opening weekend Friday game. They're going to try to expand. I think they're playing games this year on every day but a Wednesday to date, based on the current construct of the schedule.
What's the Tuesday? Is that Christmas? Is Christmas on a Tuesday?
I want to say that's right. One of the holidays is a Tuesday. Either way. Yes.
No, Christmas is a Wednesday. So they are playing on Wednesday.
Maybe every day but Tuesday. So can I see a world in which there are no preseason games? I would be shocked. I really would be shocked. But the counter from the Players Association is going to be, all right, expand rosters. Like, just make it easier for guys to get opportunities throughout the course of the regular season, as opposed to preseason being, some of these dudes make it or break it moments. Expand the practice squads, expand from 53 on the active roster, expand maybe even on 46 or 48 game day rosters. You need more jobs because you're going to run through more bodies. This is not going to be beneficial to the long-term health of the players, so you're going to need more players.
Are you surprised to hear Goodell talk about an 18-game schedule in terms of, his quote was, thinking about it in a long-range, long-term type of context? Like, it doesn't, from his words, it didn't sound imminent. Now, maybe we could go back and hear what Roger Goodell was saying about a 17-game schedule before it actually happened. But
like, what's long-term? Is long-term 2 seasons?
Right. I don't know. I don't know what long-range context is for Goodell. Is that 5 years, 6, 7?
Well, I mean, and that, Raj probably wants to oversee this, because the thing that Roger Goodell has done the most effectively is he has turned the NFL into the most dominant American sports league by a mile. Like, it's not close. And he's trying to widen the gap even further between him and baseball and basketball and hockey, because it's not close now. But his job is to make, he's the person trying to keep the shareholders happy. The CEO of the NFL is Roger Goodell, and his job is, like private equity coming in, to maximize profits for his shareholders. And the shareholders, in this case, are the owners, and all these things keep doing is going up and up and up in value. And the rights being distributed even more widely across all manner of various platforms that are bidding on his content now.
Kevin on the F&M Bank chat says, if you're going up to 18, then you got to give teams 2 bye weeks.
Now, you weren't here for Mac last Friday. Jackson, we talked with Coach Mac about, because the NFL has done 2 bye weeks before and it didn't really go well. Or they, just made I don't remember Mac's exact phrasing on it, but it just didn't really flow for players or the league. So ultimately they went back to 1 bye and then, longer weeks after Thursday Night Football, this, that, and the
other.
other.
The circumstances would be different in this case. They would be different. And Taylor on the F&M Bank chat says 18 games, 2 byes, 2 preseason games, and Super Bowl weekend lines up with President's Day, and I think I love that.
Well, yeah, it's just more football.
Yes, and Super Bowl Sunday before a national holiday. Not for us. We'd probably be working.
We'd be working. What do you mean?
But for the greater public, I love that idea. When we reach that inevitable conclusion of 18 games. Because it is when and not if.
That's why I don't put that much stock into Goodell saying, think about it long term. Because long term to me is, all right, maybe not this coming season.
But those are the discussions that have to happen with the NFLPA, right? Is, okay, what do we do now with the potential extra bye week? How do we organize the preseason? Do you have to change roster size, right? Do you have to increase that?
No, you absolutely. There's no way that the players' union could allow this to go through and maintain order among players if you don't expand rosters.
Especially with what we've seen just in the last couple seasons at the quarterback position alone.
Now, the question is, if you're distributing, so the salary cap is going to continue to go up, and this is the interesting dynamic, because how many of the players are going to vote in their own self-interest? Because if you're adding more people, you're adding more salary, does that add more salary to the players who stand to make it at the top of the market? Because famously, a lot of the frustration when you talk to players about this, and I know Blaine and I'm sure Brad has had plenty of interactions with the players union across their respective careers, so maybe they can speak on this later. The top percentage of football players doesn't always vote in the interest of the majority, and their vote carries considerable weight. 615-737-1045 is the number. Coming up, the most interesting matchups on the Titans schedule. Lucas and I haven't talked about it yet. We'll do so coming up next.
It is 12:01. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. SEC tournament happening in Hoover. Currently in progress, Kentucky 9, Arkansas 5 at the top of the 8th in an elimination game. Tennessee will be in action in about 1 hour after the conclusion of this one, after the Vols fell to Vanderbilt 13-4 yesterday. Tennessee, one loss away from elimination. They will face Texas A&M, who lost to Mississippi State last night. Vanderbilt moves on to play Mississippi State. That game tentatively scheduled for tonight at 8. Tonight, the Pacers are at the Celtics for Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals. At 7 p.m., Boston took Game 1 on Tuesday. And in the NHL, the Western Conference Finals get started. It's Game 1 between Oilers and Stars in Dallas at 7:30. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour is upon us. Show's moving quickly. Thanks for hanging out. We've got SEC tournament baseball going on, an elimination game that is now in the top of the 8th. Nobody on, 2 outs between Kentucky and Arkansas. 9-5, the Wildcats lead. At this point, Tennessee will be on the field at 1 p.m. Central Time. So Brad and Blaine will keep you updated with the latest with the Vols and Texas A&M as they try and stave off elimination of their own. Elimination, not necessarily a part of the Titans' regular season, though that has felt like an eminent part of the Titans' regular season the last 2 years. At what point are you going to be mathematically eliminated from playoff contention? But Lucas and I haven't talked about the schedule. You were out. Did you miss the announcement about the announcement? Did you miss the news buzz that is the schedule release?
I missed all of it. I missed the announcement about the announcement and the announcement itself.
Did you see any of the schedule release? I almost want to call them art now, where the Chargers are producing a full-on episode of The Sims as their schedule release.
Yeah, saw that they put Harrison Butker in the kitchen. Fantastic work.
See, I keep wanting to talk about the kicker, and you keep trying to steer me away from the kicker.
And then I bring it up.
And then you bring the kicker back. What do you want from me here? Pick a side.
No, I didn't. Obviously, I did not catch any of the programming. It would be a fool to do so, I think, on my Italian vacation.
It didn't stop you from keeping track of the latest on Gary Smith's firing.
Not shocking, the Titans only got the one preseason game.
At home. Or excuse me.
No.
One preseason game.
And it's on the road. Yeah.
Yes.
And it's just a repeat of Dolphins Monday Night Football.
Yeah.
But.
Oh, you mean primetime. You said preseason.
Primetime. I apologize. Primetime at Miami. Don't love the early bye. I feel like the bye week has gotten earlier and earlier over the last 3 seasons.
No, it literally has. It was week 7 last year. This week 5 is the earliest possible point in the regular season that a team can have a bye.
And it's not just for team reasons, because you're not as beat up in week 5 as you are in week 8, 9, but also for selfish reasons, Buck, because I don't need a break. I don't need a break on October 6th. I don't. I feel good. I'm refreshed. I'm still so excited that football is back. I don't feel broken whatsoever. I don't feel like I need to take a beat on October 6th, 5 weeks into the NFL season. Now, end of October, getting into November, I love my job. I'm very fortunate to do this job. But you start to get a little, okay. I could use a breather here.
Hypocrisy.
I could use a breather here. But I don't need a break in week 5.
You sound like Buck, like a lot, not a little. You sound. That's pretty much what he said when the schedule came out.
How does it feel?
Living long enough to see myself become the villain.
To know that you're turning into me. Because you even do some of the things that I do when you host without me here. So I'm kind of concerned about you at this point. You know, I'm like a fungus, all right?
Okay.
I keep growing and growing around you.
But in my defense, is anybody thrilled about an early bye week? Fans, players, media.
No, but you immediately then made it about yourself, which is delightful to me. Because that is the most me thing in the world. I also hate the week 5 bye because I'm not ready for my vacation yet. It's funny to say, I'm still enjoying football season by that point. I'm not miserable schlepping in from Buffalo in when are they playing the Bills? in week like 11 or something like that.
October 20th.
Because the weather is garbage and I'm coming in here off 3 hours sleep and greeted by Lucas who doesn't care about anything in the world. So yes, you sound like me.
Taylor makes a good point, too, in the F&M Bank chat. There's not even an exciting Tennessee game to plan around that particular weekend.
Well, that's true, because that is a good opportunity to take in some college football, and I know you like to get at least one Tennessee game
always.
in a year.
Sure. And the bye week's always a good week to do it. They are at Arkansas, so it's not like it's a Kent State or whatever. But, Tennessee's not playing at home. Nobody is a fan of the early bye.
Agreed. So, the most exciting matchups on the schedule. Miami... I don't know. Is there really that much of a revenge element to it for the Dolphins? Because I'm not taking anything away from I'm going to completely lie about that. I am taking something away from the Titans. The end of that game was dumb. The Titans had no business winning that game. They were not the better team for the majority of the game. And the only reason I felt like they were still in the game is because Tyreek missed half the game. Circumstances are what they are. It happens to every NFL football team. Credit to the Titans for going out there and win the game. But I don't feel like Dolphins fans don't even remember that the Dolphins lost that game, because by then they were too drunk in the stands celebrating at that point. Most people turned off that game. So it doesn't really feel like there's a lot of juice about Dolphins-Titans this year. Now, there are some interesting matchups. I love Week 1. Week 1 at Chicago is great. The opportunity to see Caleb Williams in his first NFL action, again, selfishly, I find that fascinating, but league-wide, I think there's a lot of interest. And because it's not necessarily, it's not a marquee match. There's nothing super sexy about Titans-Bears, just to the general NFL public. But if you are a fan of seeing, all right, the next phase of the NFL, Will Levis is one of the more underrated quarterbacks this year. League-wide, as far as interest level, it's more about what the Titans are doing around Will Levis than it has been about Will Levis, because they have spent a tremendous amount of money, and they've clearly indicated that at least for this season, they are going all in to try and give Will Levis the best possible situation. But I love the quarterback matchup. I think Caleb Williams has the potential to be a lot of fun in his first NFL start, and I think it's a great kind of test. Because Chicago's defense was good down the stretch, but some of the matchups, if you actually go back and look at those games, are a little wonky. How much injuries had to play into the results for Chicago, and I think they picked Goff off 3 times in one game at the end of the year. It was a bad Jared Goff game for the Lions. So it's not like a great defense, but it's a good enough defense to see the new Titans offense kind of tested against, because they just paid, what's Jalen's last name, the corner that they just gave all the money to.
Jalen Johnson. They have Montez Sweat.
Yeah.
There's some fun defensive players in Chicago that can make life problematic for J.C. Latham and Calvin Ridley and the other guys on the Titans team.
And the first Kevin Byard meeting.
Yeah.
With the Tennessee Titans since his trade.
So we talked to Amani Hooker on that, about that, if he and KB have talked about it yet. And he said he hasn't spoken to Kevin about that specifically, but he did see KB's tweet about just the eyeball emojis when the schedule came out.
So Titans get the Caleb Williams overreaction game, right?
Yeah.
If he balls out and it's Caleb Williams is the truth, is the future, or if it's a Browns 2019 opener situation.
If the Titans play spoiler to the league's darling, which they very much did in 2019, they went to Cleveland and they kicked the Cleveland Browns' ass. And Delaney Walker in the locker room just not yelling, but chirping pretty loudly. They are who we thought they were as they walked out of, what is it, First Energy Stadium?
And they change it every year. I think it's just Cleveland Browns Stadium now.
That would be easier. I would prefer that. But that was, they put 40 points on the Browns. And Baker threatened them for a quarter. Baker and Odell, because Odell was wearing an $800,000 watch.
So Chicago's the most interesting to you? Because for me, it's Cincinnati.
Well, it's not the most interesting to me. Cincinnati is interesting because that's a pretty prime flex candidate. If there's a Falcons-Raiders game in week 15 that looks pretty suspect down the stretch that you could see getting flexed out of a Monday Night Football slot. And I want to say it's a Monday Night Football doubleheader. So if you had to put the Titans anywhere, I'm sure ESPN would prefer to put them on the late game.
Well, just the chess match that could be and how late in the season it is to where that could be a very significant game in terms of playoff contention for both teams, right? So both in interesting divisions that you figure are up for grabs in the AFC North and AFC South. And with how much we're hearing about the playbook on Tyler Boyd, talking about the familiarity and just how much carryover, and how Tyler Boyd, despite being the freshest face in the wide receiver room, seems to be the one that feels most comfortable with guiding Will Levis through some of these things because of his familiarity with the playbook. So with that much carryover from Brian Callahan, the chess match that could set up between Callahan and Taylor could be fascinating at Nissan Stadium in the fourth to last game of the year before you go on that 3-game stretch with all divisional opponents to close out.
It's still not the most interesting game on their schedule, and my reasoning is going to be lame, but I think you'll understand why. The most interesting game on their schedule is the last game.
Houston at home.
Houston at home. The Houston Texans, where are they at that point in the season? Where are the Titans at that point in the season? Because, Lucas, the way that it breaks down where you have 5 of the 6 divisional games that you play in the last 7 weeks of the schedule, including that Bengals game. And if you want to boil it down even more, you have 4 of the 6 divisional games in the final 5 weeks of the schedule, with Cincinnati being the one non-divisional game with huge AFC implications. So where are the Texans in Week 18? Where are the Titans in Week 18? Because they could very well play themselves into playoff contention if they play that AFC South stretch correctly.
I think
Houston and Tennessee, because we talked about this, Tennessee probably has the second best roster in the division right now.
Very good argument for that, I think. But to me, I'm fascinated at Minnesota and Washington, because we could talk about Caleb Williams and getting him first, but you get Minnesota in Week 12. Who's their quarterback?
Yeah.
J.J. McCarthy or Sam Darnold. You get Washington in Week 14. What does the Jaden Daniels experience look like 14 weeks into his rookie season with the Washington Commanders?
You'd rather play the rookies early. You'd rather play both of those rookies early.
You could very well play 4 of the 6 rookie quarterbacks taken in this draft.
4 of the 6 in the first
Patriots.
round.
Yeah, Drake May. That's November 3rd at Nissan Stadium.
There are some compelling storyline games. There's always compelling storyline games in any of this, but like there's some legitimately fun matchups. Just having no idea what the Titans are actually going to be. Like, I'm just imagining the Bengals offense and putting Titans uniforms on it at this point, and that's kind of what they're doing. But to see how it matches up for the first time against teams, just because we're so accustomed to a certain style of play in Tennessee, I can't wait to watch. Now, speaking of the parallels between the Titans and the Bengals, the difference between Will Levis and Joe Burrow working under Brian Callahan. You're going to hear from Brian Callahan, Will Levis, and wide receiver Tyler Boyd on all of that coming up next. So many people trust Two Rivers Ford. Football players, working moms, business owners. Why? Because Two Rivers Ford has been doing business with integrity for decades. Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. So you got Will Levis, Titans quarterback. You got him working with the former offensive coordinator of the Cincinnati Bengals, Brian Callahan, the new head coach. Callahan has said with us that he spent his time primarily with the offense. That is a change of pace because Mike Vrabel famously jumping from position group to position group. He's working with the offense. He's working with the defense. He's in all the meetings. And Callahan is going to be the offensive play caller, so fair to expect that his primary focus would be there. Now, the wrinkle in this, at least this week, is Denard Wilson hasn't been to practice because he's participating in the, I'm forgetting what the exact term is, but
Accelerator program?
It's the accelerator program for head coaches, for general managers, famously that Rand Carthon was a part of last cycle when he had his opportunity to have one-on-one contact with Amy Adams Strunk for the first time and then to continue to expand the nature of their professional relationship from there. So Denard Wilson was taking part in that this week, and Brian Callahan focused on the offense. But Brian Callahan famously works with Joe Burrow, or has worked with Joe Burrow and had great success with Joe Burrow. Brian Callahan's quarterback resume, pretty nice. Peyton Manning, Burrow, Stafford, even the work that they did with Jake Browning last year. And it was funny. I don't know, Jackson, you said you heard the Callahan interview with Lawan and Will?
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Oh, I don't want to give them credit for anything, but yes, it was good. But one of the better parts of the interview, I thought, was him talking about Jake Browning, Brian Callahan talking about Jake Browning and saying that Browning came up to him at some point and saying, do people think that I'm so, and I'll use FCC safe word, do people think that I'm so crappy as Jake Browning that I just keep getting people head coaching jobs anytime they do anything functional with me as a quarterback? And Jake Browning played great football down the stretch last year. Cincinnati finished with a winning record. It wasn't stellar, but it was good enough to win, and they were in it. So, differences between Will Levis and Joe Burrow under Callahan. When I pose to you that question, the two of you, and to the audience, 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to get involved. It was a little delayed this time. It's okay. We'll work through it.
Yeah, Ant was a little delayed last night, too.
Yeah. By the way, when is he going to start getting crushed for poor postseason performances? Because that Game 7 out, and, I know he played great defense in that game, but still, something to watch. When I say biggest differences between Joe Burrow and Will Levis, word association, Jackson, what immediately comes to mind?
Differences?
Differences. Like what the main difference between Joe Burrow and Will Levis as you see it when you hear those two names together?
Draft position.
Okay. Lucas?
Well, one is a proven established quarterback in the NFL and one's not. That's the easiest one. I think more about the situation around them and how different that is, because the rest is going to be up to Will Levis. Like, we don't need to get into a game of comparing their skill sets because their skill sets are very, very different. But I think the situations of Burrow in year 2, which for him was 2021, under Brian Callahan and that Bengals offense with Zach Taylor, versus Will Levis and what surrounds him in 2024 in his second year as a pro, first year in the system, unlike Burrow, who had his rookie year to learn the system. But could there be an argument that what Levis is surrounded by is more advantageous for him personnel-wise than what Burrow was surrounded by in 2021?
Well, Tyler Boyd said as much yesterday. Lucas asked him a good question about kind of that, that environment how he can foster an environment that helps bring a young quarterback along, having done it with Joe Burrow. And Boyd pointed out, well, to be honest, we were kind of learning together, so this is a little different than what I'm going to be able to do with Will.
Yeah, I think it's a little different in the comparison of those two. Not on a skill level, but based off of with Joe coming in, I kind of only had 1 year under my belt in our offense, I believe, and I still kind of had to maneuver and kind of still work through my ability into the offense as well. So I still was going through a learning curve just as well as he was, so we kind of picked up that chemistry throughout years playing together, and me being a part of that system already flourishing here, having that same system, and with Levis, I think it'll help him grow faster because I already got an idea. Like I said, I mentioned before that I already know where he expects me to be, in certain plays or when certain coverages come about. I'm like I said, I'm real good of trying to maneuver through different holes and finding the right one so he can find me sooner, and I think it'll just help his progression.
So that's Tyler Boyd on the radio show yesterday with us. You can find the full interview on the YouTube page. Just subscribe to 104.5 The Zone's YouTube channel, and you can hear, about a 15-minute conversation with Tyler Boyd, who was a really enjoyable interview. And we were talking about that in one of the breaks. There's a lot of fun and engaging personalities is the key word. Lucas, you said they strike you as a little less scared to talk.
Little bit.
A notable theme under the new coaching staff, one would think. So, the word association that I do between Levis and Burrow is skill. I think if you asked, and this conversation came up last night on the primetime show, I can't remember the name of the commenter, but somebody said something to the effect of Joe Burrow is a more talented player than Will Levis is. And I had to stop and look at it for a second because I don't believe that's so. I don't think that Joe Burrow is a more talented player than Will Levis is. Joe Burrow, famously, does not have the best arm strength in the world. Will Levis has an absolute rocket launcher, and there's not a throw on the field or a part of the field that he can't make a throw to.
Well, look, let me ask you a couple questions. Who's got the bigger arm?
Levis.
Who's more athletic, more mobile in space?
Burrow has...
He's sneaky.
Well, and Levis has a little bit of stiffness to him that I think he can afford. I think we're going to see more. We'll see how healthy he is, right? Depending on how... So Burrow. I'll keep it simple and say Burrow, but I think Levis has something to that effect.
Who's more physical? Levis, right? So what else can all those categories I put out, we can say that about Anthony Richardson, right? That Anthony Richardson has more tools, is more physically talented than Joe Burrow. Doesn't make either of them a better quarterback than Joe Burrow.
Correct, and that's why skill is the word that I use there, because Burrow is the far more skilled quarterback at the position. It was the kind of the discussion we started to branch into when we talked about Allen and Mahomes. Both of them are extremely high-level talents. Nobody would dispute this. But I don't think there's much of a question that Josh Allen is the more physically talented player. Pat is the far more skilled player at the quarterback position. And that's only become in the last couple of years. For those of you who listen to the podcast that I do with Greg Cosell every week, Greg has been documenting this for the past 2 seasons, how much better Pat is playing within structure of the system to where the highlight reel off platform, falling away horizontally and still getting the throw off, Patrick Mahomes stuff, that's more the anomaly as opposed to the norm, which is him playing within the system. Patrick Mahomes is a system quarterback. Joe Burrow is an exceptional system quarterback. And every quarterback out there wants to be and is coached to be a system quarterback. It's a negative stigma for reasons that I cannot understand. Levis, the thing that we don't know about him is how much more skilled he's able to get. How much more can you refine your tools? Same as Richardson, right? Richardson, there was some very, very basic stuff that they were running in the early goings with him with the Colts. And you saw very incrementally the offense start to become a little more developed, a little more nuanced based on how much they saw Richardson was able to handle. And then, of course, he got very easily derailed because by week 5, he was out of lineup against the Titans and for the rest of the season.
So that goes back to my question. Is Will Levis in a better situation? Is he more well-equipped with not just the personnel, but the information around him than even Joe Burrow was in 2021? Do you think he is in a more advantageous situation for a second-year quarterback than Burrow in that 2021 Bengals offense?
In 2021, they went to the Super Bowl.
They did. Okay, let's run through it, right? In 2021, Joe Burrow is surrounded by, we'll keep it simple, receivers, tight end, running back, offensive line. Famously, offensive line, absolutely dreadful.
Awful.
Right?
Titans legend Quentin Spain, one of the best players on that line, and he was a dope.
Right. He got thrown around like a rag doll, and he was talking all the smack afterwards. Offensive line's famously terrible for the Bengals in 2021. A lot to prove for the Titans' offensive line, but you can look at the personnel and even the bones of it with a Cushenberry.
You did this last year. I know.
Sure.
I know.
So TBD on the Titans' offensive line. But Joe Burrow surrounded by Jamar Chase, who in 2021 was a rookie, was phenomenal, but was a rookie. Was surrounded by T. Higgins, who in 2021, like Burrow, was in his second year. Tyler Boyd, who was the veteran of that group, was in his fifth year in 2021. And then C.J. Uzomah was their leading tight end. Uzomah was a 2015 draft pick, so he's about 6 years into his career. Joe Mixon, the running back, kind of somewhat of a veteran player at that point.
Oh, yeah.
So Will Levis in 2024 is surrounded by DeAndre Hopkins, who's in his 12th year as a pro. Calvin Ridley, who's in his 6th year as a pro. Fifth, if you want to take out the year he didn't play. Tyler Boyd is in his 9th year as a pro. And then the running back room, kind of a split of fresh face like Spears, same age as Levis, and Pollard, who's a veteran at this point, with tight end, I suppose, the weak link there in terms of proven commodities.
Yeah, Chig is definitely not better than Uzomah was in that Bengals offense.
So just in terms of, I'm not talking about talent here. Jamar Chase, I would argue, is the best receiver in the NFL. But in terms of wealth of knowledge to lean on from your receivers, Will Levis does have more of that than Joe Burrow did in 2021, and potentially a better offensive line in front of him if J.C. Latham can adapt, if Peter Skoronski takes a jump, right? And
sure,
the guys can just hold up on the right side.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, though, because the worst version of that Bengals offense that worst version of the Bengals offensive line in 2021 was still not as bad as the line that Levis played behind last year. So that is the thing that we wait to see any kind of concrete information on until training camp.
Sure.
Although, I'll tell you what, Latham has been busting his ass to make sure that he can get that sled thing down right. And it's not a simple thing. We talked to Skoronski about it. He certainly struggled. The technical prowess and improvement, even in a couple of weeks' time for J.C. Latham, is reassuring. Don't get ahead of yourself. We'll see. He'll struggle at certain points.
But I like that, though. I like that we have barometers that we can look at.
Oh, yeah.
Once he starts to find success with the sled, then that is a direct indication of improving his technique. It's hard to find that in offensive line.
I'll never forget watching Isaiah Wilson. And again, Isaiah is the extreme here. But I always remember watching Panda out there on the practice field and Teron looking over at me at one point and being like, that guy's on his back all the time. All the time. He cannot hold his ground, even being that, because he was just as big, if not bigger than Latham. I mean, Isaiah wasn't a monster of a human being. But the technique, the care that he takes, clearly, the drive that he has, at least in the early goings, it's what you're looking for. He's checking the right boxes until you can actually determine what kind of offensive lineman in a real life situation he's going to be.
So we'll see what's in front of Levis. But the point is, Burrow was surrounded.
Is it better? I don't think so, because Jamar Chase is peak Jamar Chase, even Hopkins. And I think Hopkins is just, he's the ageless wonder. But peak Jamar Chase is better than peak DeAndre Hopkins. Calvin Ridley is a really high-level second wide receiver. Like of the tier 2, when you start to tier the wide receivers out, I know Mike Sando does the quarterback tiers for The Athletic, right? If you were to do the same exercise with wide receivers, Calvin Ridley is a very high-level player, but he's still a tier 2 wide receiver based on the level of talent in the league. So I'm not going to say, sight unseen at least, that Levis is in a better situation than Burrow was at the time. But I do think that there's a lot of comparisons to like. And I think, at least formulaically, if that's even a word, they're hitting those same notes with a better projected line group than Burrow had. Levis is probably not going to be what Joe is, because Joe Burrow, without Tom Brady in the NFL, Joe Burrow is the best. He is the most elite processor in game, and he is the most, I won't say he's the most accurate player. He is as accurate as any player in the league. And there is a difference between ball placement and accuracy. And that I don't think anybody does as well as Joe Burrow. Putting the ball in a spot where only your receiver can get it, I don't think that there's anybody that's even close to Joe that way. So I don't know that Levis can be that because the accuracy is among the biggest question marks. And he's a shotgun as of yet, as opposed to a sniper. But there's a lot to like. And the ceiling, I would argue that the ceiling for Levis should be higher than the ceiling for Burrow because Levis is the more physically talented and physically gifted player.
What he has that Burrow didn't is that veteran aspect around him at receiver, right? Like,
yeah.
It's hard to make the argument that this Titans wide receiver core, as good as it can be, is better than Chase, Higgins, and Boyd in 2021. But that is one tangible thing to point to that you can say Levis has in 2021 that Burrow did not, or has in 2024 that Burrow did not in 21.
Well, and that's something that Brian Callahan was asked about, what was that, Tuesday when last we spoke to the head coach.
I've seen Will's done a really nice job, and I think that having the veteran guys, if you watch, I watched Calvin and I watched Tyler today even, just their natural inclinations to go up and talk about something, go talk about a route, go talk about an adjustment, where that doesn't fall on Will to have to do to the receivers. They sort of help with their experience with him, sharing perspective, sharing a thought process on any number of things that involves the pass pattern, the route technique. Those guys have a great feel and understand football as good as anybody. And so it falls less on Will to make corrections as it is to those guys having conversations, which I think is a huge benefit for a young quarterback to have those guys.
So he's got all the benefits, or at least almost all of the benefits that Joe Burrow had under Brian Callahan and Zach Taylor as the head coach and offensive coordinator tandem. Levis has very much expressed an interest in being a part of that well-decorated Brian Callahan quarterback resume that includes Burrow, Manning, Stafford, and others. This was Will Levis speaking about being that next Callahan quarterback.
Oh, no.
All the tape we watch from the installs to even just the individual drills, it's Joe, it's Matt, it's Peyton, and it's cool to see those guys and know that they've been in a system at least similar to this or very similar to this and been able to have great success. So, it's big shoes to fill, but I want to be that next guy and get to that level. But I don't want to be them. I want to be me, but I want to perform and exceed the levels that they performed at.
So that's Will Levis speaking 2 weeks ago. He did not meet with us most recently at the Open OTA. We do have, not that this might concern you a little bit, the rest of the Open practice schedule, because they will have more practices than this, but these are the ones that we'll next be able to attend and report on for you. May 29th is the next Open practice, so next Wednesday, and then June 4th, 5th, and 6th, so it'll go over the course of a weekend, and then the 11th. So those are the 5 remaining open dates for media to attend off-season workouts before the team breaks for the summer. 615-737-1045 is the number. Last call for phone calls. The Scheffler traffic video is out. We'll react to it coming up next. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. If you missed any of it, check out the podcast, rewatch the YouTube video, subscribe to The Zone on YouTube, where you can get all 4 shows live every weekday. All kinds of good original content there for you as well. But for sure, make sure you subscribe to the show. We don't ever do the thing where we ask people to subscribe and then unsubscribe and then resubscribe, but apparently that's a thing. So if you care about us at all, if you care about us even just a little bit, maybe unsubscribe, then resubscribe, and help us out with the algorithm a little bit in your favorite podcast app. So Free Scotty, trending on the internet because Scotty Scheffler's, it's not police cam footage, because the Louisville police officer that apparently pulled Scheffler out of the car at last week's PGA Championship and pushed him up against the car did not have his body cam footage on. So this is like traffic cam footage from about, it looks like 150 feet away. You can't really see the irreparable harm caused to the officer's pants, which was a part of the police report.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the assault of a police officer that Scotty's been charged with.
That one's tough. So, because there's, if there is something to be said about police officers and the way that they file police reports based on things that actually happen and how far or how close they are to the actual truth. There's certainly a segment of the American population that has been complaining about this for a long, long time. And I'm reminded of that as I rewatch the O.J. Simpson Made in America documentary. Grace hadn't seen it, and we start, because I guess it's trending again on Netflix because O.J. famously now dead.
That's the 30 for 30?
Yeah, not the Cuba Gooding Jr. John Travolta nonsense.
That. I couldn't watch it because that came out, I think, after the 30 for 30, and I had just watched the 30 for and like watching the real stuff for like 9 episodes?
I think it's 6.
And then I tried to watch Ross from Friends play Robert Kardashian, and I couldn't do it. I just couldn't. One episode, maybe got halfway through. After watching an actual documentary with real footage, I cannot watch Ross be OJ's attorney.
Well, just Cuba as OJ, and then whatever terrible accent John Travolta was doing in that movie. Anyway, so the Scheffler video is out. One would expect the charges will soon be dropped because there is nothing that is very other than him. If they're going to accuse him of actively disobeying an order from police, then maybe that sticks. I don't know how you prove that necessarily without like an actual recording, without the dash or the chest cam footage, but it's pretty tough to convince me that Scotty Scheffler assaulted an officer based on that video. Perhaps the standard of proof for the Louisville Police Department is different, but again, Louisville Police Department famously not great at having their body cams on, so, this situation significantly less severe than the more famous Louisville police incident in recent memory. Polls?
Polls are presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. What is the better situation surrounding a QB on paper? What Will Levis has in 2024 or what Joe Burrow had in 2021? 64.3%. The majority are going with what Will Levis has
you homers.
Around him in 2024.
You homers.
Now hear it out.
No.
Joseph comments, assuming we know nothing about Chase outside of him being a top 5 draft pick who has not played football in a year, probably the Titans. That's not a bad point. Going into the 2021 season, Jamar Chase was a rookie. He was a top 5 pick, considered to be the best receiver in the draft, but we had not seen him take a snap since the 2019 season.
There's a dumb reason to question Jamar Chase.
Callie's,
a dumb reason.
Callie's Mayo Clinic on Twitter says, y'all are insane. Chase, Higgins, Boyd, greater than our wide receiver.
Yes, I'm with that. And listen, Jamar Chase may not even have peaked yet. He's not even due his second contract. So to say peak Jamar Chase about anything right now, just because he was an absolute stud in his rookie season, probably doesn't do enough justice to Jamar Chase. But listen, Titans have a really, really good wide receiver core. It's a great setup that they have around Will Levis. It's not ridiculous for me to accuse Titans fans of being homers in the voting on that with the team that went to the Super Bowl and Joe Burrow. Come on.
Which NFL owner is most likely to be drunk on a pedal tavern this week? As NFL meetings are happening in Nashville, Jordan says David Tepper, the Panthers. Goody says you cannot say this and not think immediately of Jim Irsay.
Yeah.
A lot of people are saying Jim Irsay.
Well, Tepper's not drinking things. He's just taking the drink and throwing it
right,
at passers-by.
He's throwing them on bachelorette parties as the pedal tavern rolls through Broadway.
Now, Irsay's the layup, but Jerry should have some seat at this table. Jerry famously has his own party bus.
Jerry, the dark horse.
Jerry is on the forefront of transportainment, of which now Nashville has made famous.
I like the idea of being stuck in traffic behind a pedal tavern, which happens in downtown Nashville, and looking up, it's like 8 NFL owners.
Martha Ford just wasted.
Just pedaling away. What is the most interesting matchup on the Titans schedule? Scoob says Jets and Lions for me. Going to Detroit is interesting.
Detroit's a fun football matchup for sure because, Detroit not as good as they were last year. They lost a lot of pieces on the offensive line. They paid 3 of their players a huge chunk of their salary cap, so that's obviously going to have its own impact. In Tennessee, I think should be an interesting game. At Detroit, though, makes that even more compelling.
John agrees with you. He says Week 18, Texans at Titans, last year's division winners. Titans hoping to pull a Texans-like turnaround this year. If all goes well, that could be for the division.
Texans and Titans at the end of the season is the most interesting game on their schedule.
Karen says the Bengals game, which I think also is very intriguing. Zach Taylor and Brian Callahan going head-to-head. Mm-hmm. Mark says Will Levis first, the national media talking heads.
Steve Lamb on YouTube says, you guys not see how drunk Kraft was at Brady's roast? He couldn't even speak. He's old. He's old. Old people slur a little bit. You don't know how drunk Bob Kraft was, although he did take a shot with Bill Belichick.
He sure did. What is the most interesting quarterback situation in the NFL? John says the Steelers, proven vet versus a quarterback approaching the last year of a rookie deal. It's just an interesting dynamic in Pittsburgh right now with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields.
Atlanta's so weird. I'm all for it. I want to see how much more weird it can get.
I guess so. A lot of people are saying Pittsburgh. Rex says it's easily Michael Penix and Kirk Cousins. Karen says Aaron Rodgers. How many hissy fits will he throw? Zay says Denver's the most interesting because they all suck.
Are those the polls?
Those are the polls.
Excellent. Some Bo Nix slander, unwarranted slander on the way out the door. Well, that was a lot of fun. Like I said, check out the podcast. You did Backstage last night, right?
We did NSC Backstage last night. Nashville taking on Montreal on the road Saturday as the search for the new manager continues.
But you're not doing that game.
No, I will be off on Saturday.
You continue to mail in your job and just abandon your club in the middle of soccer season.
Back at it next Wednesday. Nashville goes up to Cincinnati to play a red-hot Cincy team a week from yesterday.
Okay, well, we'll keep you updated with the latest going on with the Titans. They are on the field today, though that is not open to media before they get a long break for the Memorial Day holiday. Enjoy Brad Hopkins and Blaine Bishop because they got you coming up next.